I was preparing breakfast at the marble kitchen counter, basking in the morning sunlight. A fresh May breeze wafted in through the large Mediterranean-style windows of our Miami home. As I made my homemade organic smoothie, I found myself reflecting on my life. 4 years ago, at that matchmaking party at the Biltmore, a luxury hotel in Miami Beach. I still vividly remember the moment I met him. Having just quit my job as a flight attendant, I attended the party with a touch of anxiety. Michael appeared before me with a gentlemanly smile, just as I was looking for my next chapter in life after 10 years as a cabin attendant. "I've been looking for someone just like you." Those words felt like a scene from a movie. His refined demeanor, intellectual conversation, and above all, those gentle eyes. With his imposing physique wrapped in a dark suit, he exuded the aura of success. As we continued dating, I found myself falling for him rapidly. Dinners at upscale restaurants, private yacht cruises, it was like living in a dream. From the beginning, there were some peculiarities. Michael was unusually protective of his privacy. He avoided social media completely and disliked taking family photos. "I'd rather not talk about the past," he would say, barely speaking about his upbringing. He had few friends and no contact with relatives. But back then, I interpreted this as his sensitivity. If anything, I found even these introverted qualities attractive. When I discovered I was pregnant, he immediately decided on marriage. The ceremony was small, with hardly any time for preparation. Even my parents were taken aback by the sudden marriage, but as a successful investor, he welcomed me into his mansion in Coral Gables and provided a lifestyle that left no room for worry. Then 3 years ago, Emma was born. A little angel with big blue eyes like mine and the Swedish smile. Her birth should have made our happiness complete. Michael adored our daughter, providing the finest baby items and even setting up a college fund. With a cleaning service twice a week, a private chef, and membership at an exclusive club, we had what appeared to be the perfect family life on the surface. I could devote myself to raising our daughter as a full-time mother. My mother would even joke, "Aren't you just too blessed?" But lately, something's been off. Since Emma's 3rd birthday, Michael has changed. He became unusually strict, calling it discipline. He started interfering with my outings and friendships with other mothers. He checked my phone more frequently, and I began feeling suffocated, as if my every move was being monitored. Most concerning was Emma's condition. My once cheerful daughter gradually began showing signs of darkness. Her night crying increased, and she would tremble at the mere sight of her father. But when I pointed this out, Michael dismissed it, saying, "It's because you spoil her." I had become too comfortable in this wealthy lifestyle. Carrying designer handbags, driving the latest Cadillac Escalade, filling my shopping cart with carefully selected items from Whole Foods. I'd grown so accustomed to this life that I kept turning a blind eye to the warning signs right in front of me. My hand trembled slightly as I made the smoothie in the morning light. This morning was unusually quiet. No sounds from upstairs. My shadow on the marble floor seemed unnaturally distorted. I kept looking up at the second floor. Usually, Emma's laughter would be echoing through the house at this hour. Weekend mornings were when Michael routinely played with our daughter. But this morning was different. Only an eerie silence filled the large mansion. Emma. Michael. No response to my calls. The espresso machine in the kitchen filled the air with coffee aroma. The breakfast table was perfectly set. Fresh croissants, seasonal fruits, organic yogurt. Everything was arranged impeccably, yet no one seemed ready to sit down. Suddenly, I heard a faint noise from upstairs. My heart started racing. Instinctively, I knew something was terribly wrong. As I rushed up the marble staircase, I was berating myself. Why hadn't I noticed sooner? Over the past few weeks, Emma's behavior had clearly been off. Her night crying had increased, her appetite had decreased, and she'd stopped showing her usual smiles. Reaching the second-floor hallway, I saw Emma's door. The doorknob, usually adorned with cute ribbons, now had a padlock on it. Emma! I desperately pounded on the door. Tried to turn the key, but it wouldn't budge. Emma! Open the door. My screams echoed through the wide hallway. Then, I heard a faint moan from inside the room. I instinctively ran to the bedroom. Michael kept a spare key in his desk drawer. I frantically searched through the messy drawer until I found the small key. Returning to Emma's room, I inserted the key with trembling hands. When I opened the door, my blood froze. In the dim room, Emma lay on the floor. Her pink pajamas were disheveled, and countless bruises covered her tiny arms and legs. Only her faint breathing indicated she was still alive. Emma! Open your eyes. Please. I rushed to my daughter and held her small body. Warm. Still warm. But I could feel the life gradually slipping away from her body. As a mother, you must have known this would happen. A low voice made me freeze. Michael stood in the corner of the room. His usual gentle expression was gone, looking down at us with cold eyes like those of a stranger. Scream all you want. It's over now. His mouth twisted into an eerie smile. I felt like I was seeing this man's true face for the first time. The husband standing there with a cruel smile was completely different from my memories. Michael slowly approached. I could see him moving to grab my phone. As if he had calculated every action in advance. At that moment, maternal instincts took over. Holding Emma tightly, I reflexively spun around. Michael's hand cut through the air. Just a few steps to the door leading to the bathroom. But that distance felt unnaturally long. You think you can escape? Michael's voice echoed behind me. But only one thought filled my mind. I had to protect this child. I closed the bathroom door and quickly locked it. The next moment, the door shook with a loud bang. Michael was pounding on it from outside. Open up. The metal lock creaked. No time. I desperately tried to think. The structure of this house. Escape routes. Michael's movements. I had to calculate everything. From the bathroom's small window, I could see the courtyard. From there across the garden to the garage. That's where my Escalade was. Rachel. Stop this nonsense. The door made sounds like it was about to break. I made my decision. Holding Emma tightly, I opened the small window. Though it was the second floor, there was soft grass by the poolside below. This was our only option. I'm sorry, Emma. Just bear with me for a moment. Cradling my daughter protectively, I jumped from the window. The impact of landing numbed my knees. But there was no time to stop. Still holding Emma, I ran desperately. Blood was rushing in my ears. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it might burst. Running across the lawn to the garage, thoughts of the child's seat crossed my mind. But there was no time for that. We just had to get out of this house. The sound of breaking glass behind us. Probably Michael breaking through the bathroom door. I rushed into the garage and laid Emma on the back seat. After securing her with the seatbelt as best I could, I jumped into the driver's seat. Just as I started the engine, Michael appeared at the garage entrance. His face in the rearview mirror no longer looked human. I can't let you leave this house. His voice echoed. Simultaneously, the garage door started closing. I floored the accelerator. The heavy SUV roared, slipping under the closing door. Michael's figure in the rear window gradually grew smaller. Our car raced through the quiet streets of the luxury residential area. In the back seat, Emma was breathing faintly. While waiting for a traffic light to turn green, I picked up my phone. My daughter is unconscious. The operator on the other end fired questions one after another, but my mind was in chaos. In the rearview mirror, Emma's small body swayed in the back seat. The bruises looked even more vivid in the morning sun. Was this reality? It felt like a nightmare. But the pain in my hands gripping the steering wheel told me everything was real. With an almost prayer-like feeling, I kept pressing the accelerator. When I pulled up to the emergency entrance of Baptist Hospital of Miami, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Emergency. 3-year-old girl unconscious. My scream prompted the medical team into immediate action. A stretcher was brought out, and Emma's tiny body was quickly transferred. Doctors in white coats rushed over one after another. My heart constricted. This was undeniable abuse. Why hadn't I noticed what was happening right in front of me sooner? Emma was taken to the treatment room, and I was filling out paperwork with trembling hands. That's when 2 police officers approached. One was an older male detective, the other a young female officer. Could you tell us what happened in detail? I began speaking with a shaking voice. Meeting Michael, the rushed marriage, and this morning's events. The words poured out. Tears welled up several times during my account. Do you have a photo of your husband? I took out my smartphone and showed them a recent family photo. The older detective's expression stiffened for a moment. Is his name really Michael Warren? Yes, but. The two officers exchanged glances, and the younger one immediately started reporting something on her radio. Actually, as the older detective began to speak, new footsteps echoed in the waiting room. Two people in suits approached quickly. FBI agent Sarah Collins. This is my partner, James Foster. She exchanged brief words with the police officers and sat down in front of me. Her eyes held a deep look of sympathy. Mrs. Warren, your husband, no, the man calling himself Michael Warren is actually James Cooper. Something snapped in my head. He's a suspect in a series of child abuse deaths that occurred in Oregon 20 years ago. 3 young lives were taken. The words seemed to come from far away. My mind went blank. He disappeared just before arrest, and since then, under perfect disguises, he's been creating new identities in various places. I felt nauseous. I ran to the bathroom and violently threw up repeatedly. My face in the mirror was deathly pale. When I returned, FBI agent Collins quietly continued. An old file was spread out before her. The first victim, Caitlin Murphy. Age 3. I gasped. The second, Michael Johnson. Age 3. My throat went dry. And Emily Williams. Also 3 years old. All victims were 3 years old. The same age as Emma. And the same. The abuse pattern matches. First, he creates a wealthy environment. Then he mentally controls the mother, placing her under complete surveillance. And when the child turns 3, with a trembling voice, I asked, Why 3 years old? Agent Collins answered in a heavy tone. His sister died from abuse when she was 3. By their father. That scene in his mind. Her words trailed off. No one felt the need to continue. When his real name is exposed, he disappears immediately. This time too, probably already. Just then, an alarm rang out. It's from the intensive care unit. I started running, forgetting the sensation in my legs. Through the hallway, up the stairs, desperately rushing. There stood an unfamiliar nurse. I'm here to change the 4. Something felt wrong about that voice. The moment the nurse's hand touched the 4 needle, a security guard burst in. But in that split second, the nurse grabbed my arm and held a syringe to me. It was Michael, no, James. Even disguised in makeup and a white coat, those eyes were unmistakably his. It must be completed. His voice echoed with madness. She's 3 too. Like my sister. It's time to end it all. The security guard aimed his gun. But with a hostage, he couldn't shoot. Rachel, you should understand. His voice whispered, feigning its former gentleness. That day, Father didn't help my sister. No one saved her. So At that moment, I understood. The core of his madness. And simultaneously, I made a decision. You are wrong. My voice rang out, surprisingly calm. I know it was painful that you couldn't save your sister. But that's no reason to hurt other children. Shut up. His hand trembled. What do you know? My sister. You're trying to kill innocent children in place of your sister. I slowly met his eyes. Isn't it your younger self you really wanted to save? Those words seemed to strike a chord in his heart. For a moment, his grip loosened. Taking advantage of that opening, the Special Forces team burst in from behind. In the confusion, I ran to Emma's bed and held her tight. It's okay now. Mama will protect you. In the hallway, James was being restrained. His screams echoed off the hospital walls. It must be finished. My sister is waiting. Outside the window, the full moon cast its cold light. Everything was over. But this was also the beginning of a new battle. Holding Emma's small hand, I made a vow. I would heal this child's emotional wounds. No matter how long it took. At the federal court in Miami, Florida. Bright sunlight streamed into the solemn courtroom. I stood at the witness stand. In the courtroom were families of victims from 20 years ago, and those involved in the current case. Caitlin Murphy's mother, Michael Johnson's father, Emily Williams' grandmother. Their eyes bore the pain of the past 20 years. Your testimony is crucial. Prosecutor Sarah Martin spoke gently. Break the silence and tell us the truth. Taking a deep breath, I began to speak. Meeting the man who appeared under the false name of Michael Warren. The perfectly orchestrated married life. And the days until the terrifying truth came to light. The defendant has repeated the same pattern for 20 years under perfect disguises. The prosecutor's voice echoed through the courtroom. Creating wealthy environments, approaching single mothers or women raising children. Marrying them, then waiting until the child turns 3. Evidence photos were shown one after another. Before and after plastic surgery comparisons. Forged passports and licenses. Records of disguised lives in various places. And photos of the victims. After my testimony, Dr. Robert King, a psychiatrist, gave expert testimony. The defendant's actions stem from childhood trauma. The experience of being unable to save his 3-year-old sister from their father's abuse has been repeatedly reenacted in a distorted form. In the courtroom, the defendant James Cooper sat expressionless. Gone were his former elegant demeanor and gentle smile, making him look like a different person entirely. The defendant shows no signs of remorse. Dr. King continued. Diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, he shows a marked lack of empathy for others. The sentence was life imprisonment. Additionally, investigations would continue into possible connections with other unsolved cases. As I left the courthouse, Caitlin's mother approached me. Thank you. She held my hand with tears in her eyes. For 20 years, I lived without knowing the truth. But now, finally. Her words brought tears to my eyes as well. 1 year later. Our new life was gradually taking shape. We had moved away from Miami to a quiet suburban town. Emma was slowly walking the path to recovery with help from child psychology specialists. "Mama, look!" Emma's bright voice rang out as she played in the park. Now 4 years old, my daughter was slowly regaining her smile. Twice weekly therapy. Sometimes nights of screaming from nightmares. But we were moving forward, one step at a time. "Rachel, may I have a word?" Emma's doctor, Jennifer Brown, called out to me. "Emma's recovery is progressing better than expected. Your love is proving to be the best medicine." Those words warmed my heart. Thank you all for gathering here today. I held the microphone at a support group meeting for abuse victims. The venue was filled with mothers who had similar experiences, supporters, and law enforcement officials. We were deceived under perfect disguises. But that was never our fault. Small nods could be seen from the audience. What's important is speaking up. Taking action as soon as you notice something. I continued. And above all, not shouldering the burden alone. After the lecture, a young mother approached me. "I'm also in a similar situation." I firmly grasped her trembling hands in response. "Mama, school was fun today." Emma showed me her artwork. A family drawing with bright colors. "Did you make new friends?" "Yes. Katie and Lisa." My daughter was no longer afraid of interacting with others. Nothing made me happier than seeing this growth. At dusk, we sat on the garden swing. "Mama." Emma looked up at me with a serious face. "That man won't come back, right?" "No, sweetheart. You're safe now." I held her tightly. "Mama will always protect you." The sunset painted the sky orange. We were slowly discovering our new form of family. According to prison reports, James Cooper continued to justify his actions. He refused psychological counseling and kept contact with other inmates to a minimum. But that was no longer relevant to our lives. Through my work with support groups, I met many companions. Mothers with similar experiences. And people who supported them. That circle gradually expanded. I had become involved in crafting legislation for early detection and prevention of child abuse. Mrs. Warren's experience will be crucial evidence for legal reform. A congressional staff member spoke to me earnestly. Especially in analyzing potential perpetrators' behavior patterns and building prevention systems. 5 years later, Emma had grown into a bright, healthy 9-year-old. Occasionally, memories of the past still troubled her. But she had definitely developed the strength to overcome them. "Mama, I want to be a psychological counselor when I grow up," Emma said one day. "I want to help children who are suffering." Those words brought tears to my eyes. My daughter, who maintained her kindness and consideration for others despite her own wounds. That was the greatest proof of courage. On weekends, we participated in our local church picnics. Emma ran around smiling with her friends in the warm community. New neighbors. Understanding friends. supportive companions. We were definitely moving forward. Under the brilliant sunshine, Emma's smile shone brightly. It looked like a ray of hope beyond all the hardships we had overcome.